Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of Pre-Post Game, also known as a pleasure. I'm here to educate and empower, protect the athlete, and his best interests alone. Today is May the 7th, 2018. This is Monday. Everyone having a great day at work. I'm doing this podcast presented by Pre-Post Game, sponsored by Pre-Post Game, because it's a great day. There's a woman named Miss Kylia Carter, the mother of Wendell Carter, formerly known as Duke, 6'10", 259 pound, soon to be power forward in the National Basketball Association. Ms. Carter went and spoke out regarding some of the things that go into the NCAA and how their structure, their system, if you will, is set up to basically benefit everyone besides the actual athlete and the player. I call Ms. Carter a pioneer because she has given voice to the voiceless of many athletes and many families and many parents all over the world that's going through or feel approximately the same way as she does. Because of that situation, I wanted to take the time to give credit and kudos and salute Mrs. Carter for her ability to speak her mind on behalf of her son, but also recognizing there's a bigger picture in this. Many people continue to say that these athletes are getting a free education, and I'll be the first to tell you there's no such thing pertaining to free in sports, no such thing as pertaining to free in the education, pertaining to the scholarship structure. Most people that continue to speak on these matters pertaining to the athlete and the structure of sport have no idea, understand how it actually even works and where to begin. Once again, you talk about many people that's making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars off the athletic aptitude of the actual athlete. However, yet they actually return to the athlete saying that they're giving them a free education. Yet we have yet to see anyone at the level that they speak of speak nationally or publicly saying that I will prefer the education that I got as an athlete versus the actual money that I could receive and compensate to protect or help me and my family. But once again, when you talk about a business, one that you don't want to mention the term slavery or term institution, then you basically have to have a choice. And true indeed, these young men and these families do have a choice, but the choices that they're given are not ones that have been derived based off of what their needs and what their wants are. They've been derived based off of necessity, of hunger, of starvation, of if the word is desperation. So basically, at the end of the day, if you're a kid or a family that comes from nowhere, anywhere, particularly you mentioned the SEC conference, there's no secret that a lot of those families, unfortunately, and some of these kids come from areas where they don't have anything. Again, some of these kids are 6'5" at 12, 13 years old, and half of their leg hangs off of their bed. So when someone comes in and speak of terms such as scholarship as is glorified on TV, the way it looks today, you can't expect them to say anything but thank you. But yet, literally, they'll spend the next 6 to 7 months to 2 to 3 years being recruited. But when it comes to what actually goes in that actual contract, that agreement, nothing is in there that you can actually speak of. So again, when you talk about education, when you talk about business, you talk about sport, all these three things do not coincide with each other. As a former collegiate, high school, and professional athlete, I can say to you again, I had a great conversation with a friend of mine who I respect greatly. However, his belief is that the athlete should get paid because, one, he believes that there should be something done. He doesn't necessarily agree with the NCAA and what they do. However, he doesn't see it as it should be professional-based sports. Now, although I respect his opinion as well, as the players rep and as someone that does this every day, all day, I understand what's going into the situation when it comes to these kids. Prime case and example, there are schools out there when you speak of full scholarships that these kids are basically reporting back to camp to go to school at the end of summer school, say August, if you will. But what they don't realize is that a lot of these kids are not basically in housing because, again, because of their school regulations or however they have was set up, it wasn't told to them. These young men essentially are homeless for about a month. So when you talk about cost of attendance stipends and things like that, people get to mention all the time. They're not mentioning that literally these kids have to be out somewhere for a month without having any stipend given to them because the school will say, well, we're not giving you a stipend of the month of August because we paid for your actual housing on campus because you're in camp. But once again, some of these schools have now pushed these kids off of campus. So where are they supposed to get that money from? Some of these apartments and some of these facilities, which again was not told to the parent prior to them basically signing on their scholarship paperwork, there's a lot of money that goes into the actual college scholarship that is not covered by the actual university on behalf of the athlete or the parent. I mentioned the actual sports trafficking piece when it comes to the runners. Where are these young men supposed to get this money from? Well, these parents, they don't have two jobs. They don't have jobs where they can pay money. Some parents have a lot of kids where before going to college, the kid might have worked a job and actually helped the parent pay some of those bills. But now, based on the rules and regulations with the NCAA and things of that nature, now they can no longer rely on their actual loved one to go and do what they need to do. The fact of the matter, once again, when you talk about a scenario where you basically spend, or you're willing to spend up to 3 years of recruiting of an actual athlete in the terms of business and not actually take the time to even discuss or ask or actually put something in place where the actual athlete and the parent can ask questions regarding what's being written regarding an NLI, National Letter of Intent, or your scholarship paperwork in that specific school, pertaining to some of the things that's been promised to you as a recruit, and actually where you can actually give a call and say, hey, this school basically offered me this and said this, and now that I signed it, they're denying what I asked for. Who are these kids supposed to go to? The NCAA? Many have tried and they call and they've gotten a deadline. Basically, when I'm, upwards of close to 40 years old, and I'm one of those kids that actually called NCAA, and yet to this day have not received a phone call back. There's so many different things that go into this business of sport that literally are not being addressed at the level that it should. Once again, I want to applaud Ms. Carter for the fact of the matter is that this is only the beginning, as I said before. The FBI investigation pertaining to the NCAA and basketball is only the tip of the iceberg. It's not isolated to sports, to basketball. It's not isolated to football. But once again, when those that continue to preach this education piece, just get me one person to show that, hey, they said this scholarship's worth $50,000. Where do you see $50,000 in your scholarship? You're talking about the facilities that the athletes played and won championships and bowl games from, when they received T-shirts and their coaches in the university received bonuses. Just last year, a Big Ten commissioner who hasn't played football maybe since the early 60s received $20 million in bonus compensation. These athletes sustain injuries, long-term injuries, when they know whether they make it to the pros or not. But yet you keep talking about that education. These classes that these kids are taking, they don't have a say in what classes they're going to take because they don't fit along to the practice schedule. All these things continue to manifest itself until become what they call the biggest joke in sports, known as NCAA. But what is it really all about? Free labor, free marketing. Fact of the matter is, this like we has had the NFL draft a couple of weeks ago, and these young men has left their colleges. How many of these young men that went through that actual process did the university make sure that they would, if something was to happen to them, that they were covered based off of an insurance policy to make sure that they gave their all on that field because they know they had the opportunity to become pro almost up to 2 years ago. That they basically every day went out there for that university and that coach and that system and the NCAA moniker to say, you know what, if I hurt myself, I'm covered under the protection that literally says if I don't play, then I will be paid when I become pro. How many of you guys did that? Anybody asking those questions? If everything that they say is true right now, we already have a 2019 NFL mock draft. If these guys that you guys call experts and continue to subscribe and buy their magazines to the next group of kids that's basically going to go through this next year under that same pretense if they may get injured or not, should they be signing contracts with agents, if you will, 5 months in advance, not knowing what may happen or not happen based off injury, based off of teams that are coming out. When you talk about business and education, there's no Fortune 100 or 500 company that says, hey, trust this process and sign this document. There's no Fortune 100, 500 company that's going to tell you, hey, just sign this agreement because it's God's plan. But yet you talk about education and how these actual athletes can become part of the NCAA institution and how they continue to say that they got these kids and these families' best interests in mind. Once again, having a facility with water coolers and video games for predominantly African-American men who haven't seen the world to a certain extent, 18, 19 years old, and your best pitch to them is saying, hey, you can win a championship here. These men are going into the real world. What kind of education are you projecting and saying that, hey, I recruited you for 3 years, but yet I haven't spoken to you one time about what you're signing up for? Again, you continue to put this out there and you can continue to ignore the facts simply because, once again, they're athletes. You want to be fans. I understand. But as a player, I got to sit there, educate and empower, protect the families of athletes to understand. If you take away these players, again, what is a coaching profession? If you take away these athletes and these players, what is a journalist that sits and got 20 years of writing about somebody else and what decisions that they made? what skill set or expertise do they have to understand what an athlete goes through from day to day? For those people on the side of, well, just take away the scholarship, let them pay for the scholarship. Yes, let the athletes pay the scholarship. You know what? Pay them their work, what they generate for the school, and then, yes, let them pay their way in scholarship. Then you will find out how this actually works. The fact of the matter is the athletes, in particular in football and basketball, are basically the reason why you have water polo and hockey and all these other different sports. But again, you talk about education, you talk about the NCAA, you talking about fair and equal. Well, again, you can't use that argument because, once again, you talk about wrestlers, Olympic wrestlers. Wrestlers can get paid up to 6 figures to go while attending college. You talk about high school players that can literally go pro by the time they leave high school, and the same thing pertaining to hockey. They can actually hire agents prior to, but you don't allow that. You put age restrictions and stipulations on basketball and football, once again, predominantly who generate all the revenue, predominantly African-American, predominantly come from urban areas that don't have the skill set and the mindset to understand what they're getting into, only to say that, hey, I'm going to trust the process. Every single one of these coaches that come into their living room are telling these young men they're going to go pro. So it doesn't help that these adults continue to try to turn around and act like they don't understand what's going on. Sports is not a game. It's all business. It always has been and it always will be. The moment you become pros, when somebody's willing to pay money to watch you as the athlete and the family perform a sport from a monetary value. So everybody that's now recruiting you or speaking to you to direct you a certain way is now using you to basically help pay their bills. The one man that got his education, if you will, the Rhodes Scholar, Mr. Myron Rolle, out of Florida State University, went to Oxford. He basically, because he decided to education that the NFL said, no, he was too smart, and they wanted him to focus completely on football. Well, if that's the case for a young man to go pro, what do you think is actually going on at the collegiate level, where these young men and families do not have voices, the voiceless? So once again, I want to salute Miss Kylia Carter. Wendell Carter, good luck in your lottery as, again, a projected top 10 pick in the NBA draft. We look forward to seeing success on and off the field. Other parents and athletes that feel the same, obviously, again, we are here to educate and empower and protect your best interests. Like I said, you got to look out, protect yourself, invest in yourself, not the industry. My name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of Pre-Post Game. You can check us out every Wednesday on the African American Athlete Podcast, sponsored by African American Athlete, hosted by Ricky Hampton. You can also check me out here at the Players Rep. You can follow us at Pre-Post Game on Twitter, Pre-Post Game Inc. on Instagram, but you can also follow the Players Rep 1 on Twitter, the Players Rep 1 on Instagram. Look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Have a great day and God bless you.